Alright guys, we're back with another Seeing Through Gebser video. Today we are moving on to a new section, and the good news is we'll probably get through this section in just one video. So we're moving on to the dual sciences, and Gebser argues the dual sciences in the exact same way I would have argued him, which is to say, instead of talking about their discoveries or the manifestations of the dual sciences, he points to the dual sciences themselves, the existence of the dual sciences, as evidence of a movement towards integral consciousness. So without further ado, let's get into it. Having dealt with the basic sciences, we will now turn to the dual sciences. Here we are less concerned with their results, which evidence, as it were, a double quantity of aperspectival inceptions and manifestations in comparison to the individual sciences whose fusion brought them about. We wish rather to consider these double sciences in themselves, as they are already as such expressions of an aperspectival mode of realization. This is more or less clearly expressed by two prototypes of the dual sciences: quantum biology, also called biophysics, and psychosomatic medicine, also called psychobiology. Quantum biology unifies two hitherto mutually exclusive and antithetical disciplines: physics, concerned with quote-unquote inert matter, and biology, concerned with the life processes. Psychosomatic medicine also unites two formerly exclusive disciplines: psychology, with its concern with the impalpable realities of the psyche, and medical biology or physiology, concerned with purely somatic processes. What makes the dual sciences potentially aperspectival disciplines in a certain sense is the fact that their very emergence is already an expression of the, quote, supersession of dualism, a prerequisite and indicator of an irrational mode of understanding. So, it should be obvious, but I'll explain it anyways. Obviously, when you have the dual, the traditional rational way of framing these, we have biology on one hand and psychology on the other. These are antithetical, which is to say they are separate, isolated, they don't affect each other at all. And the dual sciences, their existence itself, proves that that's just kind of nonsense. So, together with Erwin Schrödinger and Ernst Dessauer, Pascual Jordan is the most prominent representative of quantum biology. Pascual Jordan indicated the inherent moment of free decision in the acausality of molecular physics, where the, quote, element of creativity is central, unquote, to the definition of organic life processes. This is tantamount to a recognition of, quote-unquote, time as a quality. So I think what he's saying is, he doesn't make it very clear, I think it's a criticism, but Gebser is saying that free will belongs to a realm or domain of the human condition that is simply acausal, and it's immeasurable. It's irrational. We do have freedom. Go watch my response to Alex O'Connor's determinism, which is a secular attempt, by the way. I don't really see any reason why you have to invoke God or anything like that. But he talks about that, where the central processes, he talks about the acausality that reigns there. The physicist's courageous comments on question of organic life are particularly revealing. Quote, could it not be that the ultimate... here we go. Could it not be that the ultimate and most decisive directing processes in organic life are so refined as to be no longer located in the area of causal mechanical constraints? I'll repeat that. Could it not be that the ultimate and most decisive directing processes in organic life are so refined as to be no longer located in the area of causal mechanical constraints, but in the realm of free events required to make decisions? This is a possibility for thought, even if at a first glance a fantastic possibility. It is no wonder that when this possibility was first mentioned, most biologists summarily rejected it. Yet the experiences and experiments of the past 10 or 20 years have uncovered a plethora of facts that no longer permit us to view this question as hypothetical, but as a decisive, indeed patently and reliably decisive, question. What I have suggested is not only a logical possibility, not just a conceivable possibility for discussion, but simply a fact. Organic life is really so. So that's what he's saying. The ultimate and most decisive directing processes belong to this immeasurable acausal sphere. Pretty cool, I think. Get out of this rationalist determinist nonsense. Here, listen to this. We must accept it as a fact that in its essential and crucial acts, life is directed by processes immanent in the area of nucleophysical and molecular physical acausality. So acausality is where the real changes in the world, both human and, I guess, more broadly, happen. So that's cool. Where mechanically calculated predictability does not prevail, and where there is no unwinding of a clockwork protected against unpredictable, incalculable events. The ultimate directing acts in organic life occur in the zone of those natural processes where unforeseeable decisions have surprising effects. Beautiful. It almost reminds me of like Game of Thrones or something. Tywin does the Red Wedding, great. What you didn't foresee, and an unforeseeable decision having surprising effects is that, unfortunately, what you did is you made a martyr out of Ned Stark, and Ned Stark's legacy was very respectable. So what you've done is you've ensured the future destruction of your house, the house that you claim to live and die for. So well done, moron. All right, this is Gebser. What just a few years ago was rejected as a quote-unquote fanciful possibility is today a demonstrated fact. No longer do we need to respect causal mechanical constraints for critical processes. We are no longer imprisoned in the rational mode of thought, but are in a position to assume an acausal, free process. We do no longer need to respect causal mechanical constraints for critical processes. Pretty cool. And the very thought of it liberates us from the quote-unquote cage of mental causal thinking. Such a free process is thus not perspectively fixed, but is simply a-perspectival. Similarly, psychosomatic medicine is implicitly outlining an irrational mode of realization. This is evident from Alexander Misterlich's remarks, which indicate that the new basic attitude in psychosomatics is not based on the, quote, scientific theory of psychophysical dualism, unquote, an attitude for which Victor von Weizsäcker design of a Gestalt theory furnished the possibility. An attitude for which Victor von Weizsäcker's design of a Gestalt theory furnished the first possibility. Weizsäcker has stated that this as follows, quote, the basic factor in the relationship between body and soul is that they are not two things juxtaposed and influencing each other, but that they mutually interpret one another. Via the psyche, we acquire awareness of the body's unconscious reason and passion, and through the body, we are informed of the natural need of the psyche. How awesome is that? So maybe you're in therapy. Say you have like a sex addiction, right? So you're talking to your therapist and you just cannot understand why. You have a loving wife, you have children, and you sincerely do love them. You really don't like this idea of ruining your family because you're not a bad person. You just have an addiction. So the psyche understands the lust of the body, the unconscious reasons of the body. It almost feels like the sex addict is being pulled into, or I should say pushed, falls into another woman, we'll say. Okay, so the psyche understands the body. Great, but the body can also understand the needs of the psyche because they're linked. So this sort of depression or this, what's the word I'm looking for? This malaise. Maybe you're just tired, you're sick, you're constantly frustrated. Yeah, well, the psyche needs to socialize. The psyche also needs exercise. The psyche needs stimulation, needs all these things. So these work together. This sort of Descartes mind-body dualism, complete nonsense. Spinoza deconstructed that. Don't listen to that nonsense. This mutual explanation may occur in diverse ways. Explanation, fantasy, foreboding, insight. Descriptive science on one hand, and poetry on the other are two ends of a series which need not be intentionally interrupted. Whew. Nevertheless, this is still, what's his name? Weizsäcker. Nevertheless, mistakes and errors occur, which are troublesome in medicine, particularly if the work of explanation is isolated and dominant. Psychophysical causality is an example. Within a limited context, one could easily say that an illness comes about due to physical processes, such as poison, or due to a psychic process, such as dread. Yet with a more complete consideration, we must correct these statements and say that not the illness, but only symptoms arise in this way. In an illness, it is impossible to observe whether the psychic or the physical appearance is the cause or the earlier occurrence. They occur simultaneously. So we have a great example of acausality. Does the illness cause the psychological problem, or does the psychological problem caused the illness. Both are present and efficacious simultaneously. It is not one or the other. It is acausal. They both cause each other, if you want to put it that way, but that's completely irrational. Pretty cool, you know? This idea that, and of course, psychosomatic stuff, if you don't know, it's just this idea that, kind of like we just outlined, the psyche and the mind are unified, they're integrated. So what affects one will affect the other. Now, the degree to which this happens is up for debate. But there are times when maybe you've gone through a traumatic event, maybe you witnessed like a murder or something. You might have some illnesses after that because your psyche is so messed up that, hey, everything's unified, everything's a unified, integrated whole, so it's possible that you might have some illnesses. I don't know if this is the best example because, one, it's fiction, and two, I don't know if it was proven in the end. But think someone like, remember Chuck McGill in Better Call Saul, that piece of shit? Remember all of a sudden after he divorced his wife, he had for lack of a better term, or we'll say a neurological, biological resistance to like electricity. There you go, right? I mean, that's all of a sudden the illness and the psychology, the deficient aspects of both are simultaneously present. They just happen to occur at the same time, I guess. Okay, Chuck. That's why you were a bad brother. Okay. This is Gebser. But let us return to von Weizsäcker's student, Alexander Mitscherlich. After further ascertaining that, quote, new knowledge can suddenly, as in mutations, unquote, chance upon man, Mitscherlich indicates the inadequacy of purely rational methods for the investigation of invisible, minute structures in nuclear physics, as well as in psychoanalysis. I want to talk about that for a second. When we talk about the new knowledge can suddenly, as in mutations, chance upon man. Obviously, that's a reference to the structures, but also it's a reference to the temporal unfolding of knowledge. Now, I'm sure you guys watching this, you guys have some sort of academic or at least intellectual background, so I can imagine you've had the experience where you're thinking about Kant, or maybe you're thinking about math, and you think really hard, and you've been thinking for 2 weeks on this goddamn problem, and it is just killing you, right? 2 weeks on this problem. Then you're out in the bar with your buddy, you're having a beer, and boom, suddenly, mutationally, it just arises to you. That's irrational knowledge, and it's interesting to think about the temporal unfolding of that. It kind of reminds me of the people when they're in AA. They say, how'd you get addicted? They say gradually and then suddenly. There you go. That's very similar to in many times at least, knowledge process. I'm thinking gradually I'm learning it, and then boom, one day you've got it. Pretty cool, I think. Psychoanalysis has, quote, given anthropology the certainty that man's existence is rooted in various basic regions of being. Repeat. Psychoanalysis has, quote, given anthropology the certainty that man's existence is rooted in various basic regions of being, and that the methods for an understanding of a man must be appropriate to such regions. Thus, there cannot be a heuristic principle which sets aside this knowledge by grasping man only partially from a particular mode of thinking. What does that sound like? This is what I'm saying. I can imagine Gebser reading some of this and just being like, okay, I'm just going to copy and paste this. I mean, it's a really great way of explaining the irrational integral intellectual goal. Yes, we will understand the full human, and we will look at these perspectives from their own perspective, not just the rational one. And he says it beautifully. Why do we do this? Because we want knowledge of the human as a whole and not a fragment of the human, because the fragmentation of the humanity is terrible. It's what led to World War II, World War I, all these terrible things. So, yes. Okay. Here we go. This parallelism between Mitscherlich's quote-unquote modes of existence and our consciousness structures, there you go, is not an artificial approximation, as will be obvious from Mitscherlich's following remarks. Quote, man's differing modes of existence demand differing modes of knowledge, which must remain incommensurate with each other. Ooh, voice crack there. Each other as an expression of the basic incommensurability of human existence with each of its forms of knowledge. The obligation proceeding from such knowledge requires us, at the very least, to view synoptically those forms of knowledge that cannot truly be synthesized. Repeat. I'll repeat a little bit of it at least. Man's differing modes of existence demand differing modes of knowledge. That right there might be our new Idols of the Cave, Idols of the Cave slogan. Man's differing modes of existence demand differing modes of knowledge. I want you to say that word for word next time a rationalist asks you why you even bother doing this in the first place. What a beautiful way of expressing it. It's just, you can tell when these guys got it. You can tell when someone's got it because they write very clearly, very just succinctly, and very to the point. And that's what Gebser and this Mr. Link guy does. It's just a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful expression of integral consciousness. Very simple. It's amazing. Okay. Let's see. The concept of overdetermination, pioneered in psychoanalysis and previously applied only to dream interpretation, is eminently suited to the analysis of human existence. It enables us to dispense with the old expedient of visualizing the various levels of being that man pervades, and which all too easily present themselves to the observer in antithetical or dualistic terms, as in the conceptual pairs body-soul, rational-irrational. In the existence of man, those modes of being presenting themselves to man's knowledge as levels, structures, are realized as overdetermined, that is, more than simply determined. Organic processes become transformed unconsciously into psychic into rational, which is to say that once you add a new structure, the aspects and the energies of the previous structures are kind of filtered through that. So everything kind of integrates into one. So you can see manifestations of each structure, but at the same time, everything has a little direction. Like as he said, organic processes become transformed unconsciously into psychic into rational. So there you go. Quote, who's he quoting on this? Didn't really say. With respect to history, it is impossible to regard man from a generalized aspect of one historical segment. It is singularly important to recognize this, since the claim to exclusivity of a rational monism as developed by the scientific era is not generally considered erroneous. For exclusive validity is accorded to the causal mode of operation, the other modes of existence are not only denied validity, but also their effectivity within the encompassing fabric of the phenomenon of man and drastically curtailed. Beautifully said. This attitude that we must perceive, quote, the encompassing fabric of the phenomenon of man, unquote, and consider it as something other than a circular process binding the vital physical to the mythical psychic dimension, leads to the observation that, quote, in order to grasp freedom, other forms of thinking beside the scientific are mandatory, unquote. Failure to consider them can lead to overlooking the existence of, quote, conceivable powerful energies. How beautiful is that? So why do we do this? Because to overlook the magic structure and the mythic structure and the other structures is to, quote, overlook the existence of conceivably powerful energies. Beautiful. For man, freedom in nature can no more be deemed separable than body, soul, or spirit can be detached from the more encompassing unity of a person and rendered into an unequivocal, which is to say rigidified, perspectival, description of the person in terms of one of his components. There are in man independent spheres completely intertwined or entwined. The world of spirit and matter, of life and soul, the spherical pervasion of the spirit by matter, of the body by spirit, is for all aspects of human life a proto-element. Regarded in this light, such aspects may be said to constitute life as a quality. How they are perceived shows the level of an individual's creative freedom. The decisive factor in human existence is not definable physically and not somatically. The possession of spirit as a primordial element is crucial, and this decisive recognition leads Mitscherlich beyond the merely psychological God, interpretation of Carl Jung, and the pronounced polarization of Weizsäcker. Sorry about that. My goodness, there's just so much bullshit in there. Not bullshit in the content's good. It's just the way it's written sometimes. Okay. So very, very interesting. There's a sphere, which is to say everything is connected in that sphere. The sphere closes off closes off in circles so that everything comes back. Everything is contained within that bubble, because if not, it would just be space and it would go away. But we know, since past and future are integrated in the present, that's not true. Everything is integrated. Everything is connected. Everything is the integral whole. Let's see. Give me 1 second. All right, so we'll skip ahead a little bit. The remarks quoted above reveal the extent of aperspectival inceptions, particularly in the dual sciences. Our supposition of several years ago that the dual sciences would have a crucial and generally transforming and restructuring role in the future, and will thus contribute decisively to the awareness of the newly emergent consciousness structure, has thus been unmistakably corroborated. So Gebser's patting himself on the back for predicting not only kind of the rise of dual science, well, I guess, I don't want to say predicted, he probably knew it was coming, but predicting their importance in ensuring the aperspectival integral rigidification of our structure. Let's see. Oh, that's right. Okay. To what extent this holds true for a third dual science, parapsychology, which we must discuss briefly, is another question. At first glance, one is inclined to classify it as a border science or as an area of specialization. Yet, inasmuch as it was founded on Gustav Theodor Fechner's psychophysics, it is a dual science. The concept, quote, parapsychic, was coined in 1889 by Max Dessoir. Parapsychology is a theory about phenomena which occur alongside para, the normal course of psychic life without necessarily implying an illness. It can be termed scientific occultism. It is concerned with an experimental explanation of those phenomena which escape material causal interpretation and is largely bound up with the observations of mediums in a state of trance. Let's repeat that. It is concerned with an experimental explanation of those phenomena which escape material causal interpretation. I'll tell you what it is in a second, don't worry. Well, Carl Jung has attempted to subsume under the God, I am losing it today. Well, Carl Jung has attempted to subsume under the psychological concept of synchronicity are predominantly parapsychic phenomena. So, of course, a synchronicity is a coincidence that is too coincidental. And a coincidence is two things that appear causally related but aren't. So I'm talking about my dad in my car with my friend or my brother, and he calls right then and there. That's a coincidence, right? So a synchronicity is when that happens and it feels so coincidental to the point where you basically have a numinous experience. And the problem, but look what's happened here, right? Look what's happened here. In a way, we have kind of regressed because you're regressing to this hidden causality that's so popular in the magic structure. Now, of course, the magic structure doesn't think in causality. So hidden causality, you can use it to understand it, but don't get too lost on it. It's interesting to think why he does that, because when you take away that causal element and the things are still related, it does feel like that unified magical whole that we talk about in the magic structure, where everything is interconnected magically and just hidden causality. Pretty cool, I think. But it's interesting. There might be some disagreement on them. Structurally, they are pre-causal and not acausal, and, as telepathy shows, do not manifest a causal nexus but flow from the spaceless, timeless effectuality of the vital nexus. Now, of course, when he says telepathy, he's not talking about Professor X. Think poker, right? I used to play poker. I'm not particularly good. I'm probably better than you, though. I used to play with my buddies, and you know what they have, right? You know what they have. Now, they're never going to come out and tell you that because that would defeat the whole purpose of the game. But you know what they have. When you're out with your girlfriend at a family event and the music is playing and you know your girlfriend hates the music, and then you have aux, so you change it, and then she looks at you and it's kind of, you know, you can do a little bit of telepathy. That's magic structure stuff, of course. Parapsychology investigates, on the one hand, parapsychic phenomena, on the other, paraphysical and parabiological phenomena. It has proven the fraudulence of many mediums and advanced experimental proofs of the existence of clairvoyance in space and time. Owing primarily to the works of J.B. Rhine, the occurrence of telepathic capacities, thought transmission, is today no longer deniable, even by science. Yes, we can telepathically communicate our thoughts. No, it's not like X-Men. Let's be reasonable here. Such phenomena have made a remarkable impression on the public. This can be explained on the basis of the nothing but rational attitude for which these phenomena are an annoyance. Fucking based. They disrupt the causal connection of mechanistic thinking and are thus highly irritating. Yet this disruption of the causal nexus does not demonstrate that these phenomena are irrational. As is evident from our description of the magical consciousness structure, they are primarily based on the pre-rational and occur in the unilluminable, egoless, dormant darkness of the magical. Their foundation lies in the vital nexus, the communion relationship character of spaceless, timeless magic. Strictly speaking, parapsychology is a dual science researching the effectiveness of the magical region and its emergent manifestation in the mythical and mental zones, and endeavoring to unite the vital with the psychic mental. Beautiful. That's exactly how I was going to describe it. It is putting science to the magic structure. Telepathy. What else? What else? All the weird magic structure stuff. Trying to put synchronicity, that's a good example. The non-causal or the hidden causality, the hidden causal nexus of magic structure. We're trying to put science to that, and there's a problem, as you can probably obviously see. Yet even today, it is still guilty of insufficiently recognizing the basic structure of its investigative field. Thank you. Its previous conceptions in no way explain the basic phenomena. We can only glimpse its emanations in the form of psycho-energetic manifestations. As long as parapsychology approaches its field with a predominantly rational attitude, it is working inappropriately. Yes. The rational interpretation, the mental illumination of the pre-rational darkness, merely destroys this darkness, and thus its reality escapes our rational grasp. The essence of the arcane, the occult, is its space-timeless concealment. It can never be made visible. Beautiful. Yet it could become transparent if we would perceive such phenomena irrationally, and not approach them rationally or permit them to mislead us irrationally, or allow them to overpower us pre-rationally. Boom. The attitude we have described here as inappropriate, indeed as improper, results, for example, from a remark probably derived from Schopenhauer, quote, acting at a distance. So that's what parapsychology, we're acting at a distance, which was supposed to explain magical processes. Now, what's the problem here? As we know, as I talk about all the time, rationality was born from the preceding discovery of space. And so when you say acting at a distance, well, distance is obviously related to perspectivity or objectified space. That is a problem. You do not want that. We're going to pre-rational. If you want to understand the pre-rational on its own terms, space has got to go. This attitude, however, neglects the fact that the magical region is determined by spacelessness and timelessness, so that any terminology operating with space-time concepts is faulty. Thank you. Categorical, calculative thought destroys the acategorical elements and clearly proves to be a kind of principle of indeterminacy. Even if the disruptive factor here is not the physical intrusion altering the course of events via the experiment. The disruptive factor, so we're not disrupting this by improperly adding some sort of variable to our experiment and knowingly doing something wrong. That's not the problem. The problem is being rational in the first place. That's the problem. The problem is not with any deficiencies of the experiment. The problem is that you are doing an experiment in the first place. The disruptive factor is the rational dualistic thinking itself. By measuring and dividing, it intrudes into space-timelessness, and this in turn is disrupted by the spatio-temporal measuring intervention of rational thinking. Beautiful. Let's see. As soon as parapsychology is able to surrender the rational method in favor of diaphany, making things transparent, even if only partially, the results of its research will lead to an astounding incrementation of aperspectival knowledge. And it is to be emphasized once more that it is not the phenomena produced by parapsychology which are irrational. Rather, its efforts to assimilate the other structures of reality and consciousness besides the predominant mental structure form the basis for an inception of an irrational mode of realization. Let's repeat that. That was important. And it is to be emphasized once more that it is not the phenomena produced by parapsychology which are irrational. We know that because we just covered that at best, it's a deficient rationalist accounting of the magic structure, so that's not irrational. So we know that. Rather, having said that, the effort to do it, the goal to integrate these two, that is irrational, my friend. Its effort to assimilate other structures of reality, the magic and mental, and consciousness besides the predominant mental structure form the basis for an inception of an irrational mode of realization. This mode will be completed when this dual science has disassociated itself from the mental rational consciousness structure. When it grasps that something which cannot be illuminated ought not to be illuminated, that illumination would destroy it, and that it can be made transparent. Then, instead of the inferior fascination with the deficient magical phenomena to which many serious parties are succumbing today, a perception of space-timelessness and its pre-causal structure will emerge. Archaic, primordial, pre-space timelessness as the consciously emergent space-time freedom. That is where we will end it today. I love you guys. Next week, what are we doing? All right, we got the arts next week, baby. We're getting into music. That'll be fun. Let me know what you guys think. Let me know what's going on with you guys and your ideas. And I love you. I'll see you soon.